Welcome. Welcome to Second Breakfast. Before we get the show started, I always like to remind people what I like to do first thing every day, before I even start my first breakfast, let alone my second breakfast, which is to thank my higher power for my health, for my wealth, for my life. And when I say by my wealth, I mean my spiritual wealth. And then I pray for others. I pray for those that I love and those that I do not. And then I ask for help. I ask for help to love those that I do not. And I also ask help to get through the day. Just today. It's very important in today's world that we get help because we cannot do things on our own. And your higher power will always be there for you. And then after that, of course, when I'm praying for others, I also ask for help to love those that I do not. And again, just to get through the day, just today, followed by the Lord's Prayer and Serenity Prayer. And that gets me ready for the day. And I hope you're ready for the day as well. And when we get back after the intro, we'll get your blood pumping with the first couple of stories. So, let's go. All right, let's get on with it. Welcome to Second Breakfast, a stream of consciousness that fills part of the gap between the nap, the no answer period, and Blazing Cat for Fridays, where we do a cold read-through of the best news aggregate in the greater Toronto area. We're streaming on 3 platforms, Rumble, X, and YouTube. So please give us a like, thumbs up, follow, share, and subscribe. Most of all, the chat is up across all 3 platforms. So please feel free to ask anything. Comments drive the algorithm when I'm not driving it down with my forbidden words. This veteran appreciates your support. Please visit my channels and share. I'd like to extend a thanks to my latest subscribers and followers on Rumble. As those numbers slowly start to tick up, I really appreciate all of those of you who've done this. It's cheap, it's easy, it's free, and it helps to build this channel. I hope you're all having a wonderful morning and ready to face the day with the hope of love and your fellow man. And hope that you don't end up going to an office party that has a cake that looks like this. All right, let's move on to this next little blood warmer. So, things that make you say, Syria asked Germany not to deport its citizens back home, warning it would make the country unsafe. Well, I guess that kind of explains the mass migration plan by the elites all over the planet to inundate Western nations with nothing but the refuse and dregs of those very nations that now say, no, we don't want those people back. Not at all. Right. Well, I just thought that today, as being Sunday, the 22nd, and tomorrow being the 23rd, when Parliament finally sits back in, as I cover the lower house, when it sits every day, 45 minutes before the lower house sits, by the way, the no answer period. And we can see that the meetings are already being scheduled, and one's already canceled, the Standing Committee on Public Accounts. Oh, indeed. Well, last week we saw a lot of meetings getting canceled and adjourned, especially the one, not last week, sorry, the week before when Parliament was sitting, especially that Wednesday when everything was canceled because of Tumbler Ridge. What would they do if a real national emergency started? Would they cancel every single time? I mean, a lot of other people in Canada still went to work that day. They still had to. I understand that they're public representatives, but they didn't need to shut down the entire Parliament we still have business to take care of, right? Order of Paper, which, by the way, is published by Stephen McKinnon's group, as he is the parliamentary House leader, as the government always has to appoint one. And of course, his team puts together the order paper of all the business that's going to be happening in Parliament day to day based on their scheduling. And when we looked through the order of business, went through, and I was like, oh, look at a second question by Don Davies of NDP, an act to amend the Canadian Elections Act. Yes, they've been talking about this for a while. Now, obviously, the NDP would support this, and if the Liberals support this as well, I think that's enough votes for them to pass this bill. And what is this bill going to do? Well, there's Don Davies, in case you didn't remember what he looks like. Oh, can barely see them past my war bug. Okay. An act to lower the federal voting age in Canada from 18 to 16 years of age. First reading. So, we'll see how fast this one goes through. But can you imagine giving 16-year-olds the right to vote? There should be something in this act that's amended that's saying, yeah, you can have the right to vote at 16 if you're in the military, because you can join the military at 16. I believe you still need your parents' permission at that young age to join the reserves, right? And yeah, so at that point, if you're joining and you're training to put your life on the line, then you should have the vote. But other than that, 16-year-olds are not educated enough to make a proper political decision. In fact, we do know that the majority of the kids in school these days are all being brainwashed by cultural Marxists into far left-leaning ideology. Of course, a lot of them are coming out of school realizing that's not making them any favors because they can't get a job. Not that there are any jobs left anyway, as wealth continues to exodus out of Canada because of far left liberal policies. But, I mean, when I grew up, when I was in high school, at that young age, of course, I was a liberal. You always are, usually, at a young age. You typically lean left in liberal ideology. It's just the way it is. The older you get, you become smarter, you become more educated, then you realize far left ideology is fine if you're just funding it by other people's money and never have to account for any of the decisions that you make in life, because that's kind of the way they run their government as well, not being held accountable for anything. Well, let's move on with the show. Just a reminder, yes, we have our other channels. Of course, our top story, liberal TFW corruption. We continue to increase in some views on that. Very few on Rumble, increasing on YouTube, just a handful again on X, but still more than Rumble. And as a reminder, if you're wondering why people are being gaslighted perpetually, that's because the Liberals established a qualified Canadian journalism organization credit that basically funds their media organizations by 27 to 30 grand per year of your tax dollars, people. That's right. The government is paying the media to lie to you and to repeat liberal propaganda every single day. And where does that leave us? Well, let's listen to a small message here on temporary foreign workers being exploited by Edison Motors. If you're not familiar with Edison Motors, they developed a hybrid logging vehicle that could regenerate its downward motion as it crawls up and down those rugged, mountainous, outdoor, roadless terrain. And so by recapturing the energy of the vehicles moving down those mountains that they've gone up to get the logs, they transfer that energy back into the electrical system and reuse it, making it really affordable. And of course, BC had an EV or electrification or green scam policy, whatever, right, that they would help any organizations out there within their province that are pushing green policies. And of course, this is a very green system that they developed. And when they went to this agency, the agency basically said that they had to go through another party that they would appoint for them to be able to put their request through so that they could get a cut. Anyways, it was very, very not above board. And the press didn't cover much of it. They took them to task for it. Many independent journalists and independent medias have covered the story as well. But the story is pretty well vanished. Nobody's been held accountable for them not getting the funding. But of course, they're common sense people, so they didn't depend on government funding. They still managed to fund it themselves, and because they're already an established business industry that works. And the BC government seems to be doing everything they can to destroy them, along with the rest of the trucking, which is what this rant is about.
Started Edison Motors because I wanted to improve the trucking industry. And the way I saw to do that was build a better truck. I was tired of the way that we were seeing trucks go, the lack of right to repair, all those things. We've done enough videos on that. Today I want to talk about something else that I've held it in long enough, but it's time to talk about it. And that is the abuse of the temporary foreign workers and student work permit and the abuse of these people in the trucking industry. Now, to preference this, I don't want to see a bunch of racist comments. The point of this video is to not be racist. It's to talk about the abuse that is happening to these drivers. And let's be honest, these drivers are coming from countries where they want a better life for their family. They're coming to Canada because they want to see that improvement, and I don't hold that against anybody. Lord knows if it was my family and I had a chance to give them a better life, I would take it. But these drivers are coming over here, they're being treated like shit, and they're being abused. It's not good for us, it's not good for the wage industry for Canadian truckers, it's not good for the public safety, and all it serves is to make the trucking company owner. That's who we need to be starting holding accountable. The government that's allowing this abuse to happen, and the trucking companies exploiting this system. Let's have a look at what's happening to these foreign drivers. So a lot of them are coming in under either student work permits and then being forced to drive a truck, or they're coming in under a temporary foreign worker permit. And what happens is basically a company does a labor market impact assessment, which says that, hey, is there a shortage of labor in that market? If there's a shortage of labor that company can hire, they're going to apply to hire a temporary foreign worker overseas, which is what they do. But they make up BS reports, or they'll post a job ad that says, because trucking is not hourly rate. That needs to be understood, is that you don't have to pay an hourly rate. So you can post a job that's saying, hey, we're gonna pay 30 cents per mile, which works out to like $15 an hour if you make maximum hours and drive as fast as you possibly can. So you can take somebody like this, you can force them into a position like that, and they'll post a job that nobody wants to work at because nobody is willing to drive one of these trucks away from their family for weeks and weeks at a time for $15 an hour. A Canadian will just go to work at McDonald's, but they'll post that and they'll say that there is a driver shortage. There is not a driver shortage. There is not a shortage of truckers. What there is a shortage of pay to incentivize people to go do trucking. If you paid 50, 60 bucks an hour for being away from your home like you do other camp jobs, there would be no shortage of truckers. No, it's a trucking company because they want to pay the absolute lowest rate they can. So they say, hey, we posted an ad for crappy wages. Now we can't find anybody, so we need to go to a different country where the wages and standard of living is lower, and we'll incentivize them. This is where the abuse starts happening. They promise them a better life. You're going to move to Canada. It's going to be fantastic. You're going to make a huge amount of money. You're going to make $15 an hour, which sounds like amazing money where they're from until they find out the cost of living in Canada is so high. And then they're entering into a temporary foreign worker program where they are forced to work for one specific company. Your employment is tied to one company, which means that if you quit your job, you have to leave the country. Your work permit cannot go anywhere else. And now you look at the abuse that could happen. You're coming over to a strange country. A lot of them are asked to pay for their flights, pay for their visas. Some of them I've heard are being asked to pay rent. They're in the sleeper, the back of the truck, and they said you need to pay rent for being in the back of the truck while driving, to the point where they make almost $0. And if you complain, you got to leave the country.
So if you're not following Edison Motors and you have a YouTube account, a good channel to subscribe to. And of course, I recommend you go to their channel and watch the rest of the video and get educated if you don't already know what the Liberals are doing to us. Speaking of Liberals, here's the Honorable Robert Oliphant. Why am I bringing him up? Well, let's just take this out clip from Moose on the Loose.
Very quickly. Here's that clip I was talking about. We've got Daniel Boardman here asking a question to Liberal MP Rob Oliphant whether Canada is getting involved, and well, I don't think they prepared any paper planes for this event.
Hi, thank you for coming. So you stated that you support not regime change, but the regime going away, or regime leaving is sort of your plan. Predicated on the fact that it's highly unlikely that Khomeini just decides to pick up, walk away, cut his losses, and then just stop oppressing the people. The logic is the regime would need to be changed in order for the regime to be changed. So directly, would you support one of our allies, specifically America and or Israel, doing a strike targeted at the regime expressly to help the people of Iran? Would you support such an action from one of our military allies? And side note, Canadian military values are about fighting for peace and liberty.
Great question.
Our Minister Anand has been very clear that we do not support an American strike. Very clear. And
yeah, that's because the Liberal Party supports the terror lords and their activities. I mean, they're hosting a lot of these leaders in our own country, giving them safe passage to live here. So of course they don't support that. They're a bunch of cowards.
that is the Canadian position. We do not believe in non-UN sanctioned military action. We don't do that. So the regime, we don't.
The UN is full of a bunch of weak, pathetic leaders, if you can call them that. These guys have no legs to stand on. They keep protecting these terror lords, Hezbollah terror lords in Canada, allowing them safe passage here to flee these countries, to live here in peace after all the terrible things they've done in their countries. It's deplorable. If people actually knew what these liberals were up to, I don't think Canadians would really vote for them. They just don't know. Maybe we should be printing out some of these newspaper article headlines like that and sticking those on bulletin boards at the grocery store. Stuff like that too. Just everything and anything that gets people to wake up. This is not even the article I was looking for, but border agency investigating dozens of cases of potential Iranian officials allowed into Canada. Liberals making it easy for these guys to just slip right in here.
We support the regime. We have not supported the regime ever. But it doesn't mean we're going to get into military action.
But all UN military action has to be sanctioned by both Russia and China. So if our position is we can't do anything unless Russia and China agree to it, that's a nonsensical, like, pro-authoritarian position by default.
We can talk about UN reform. I'm happy because I just came from 3 days at the UN last week.
Yeah, Daniel Boardman got him there mentioning Russia and China, and he didn't want to answer to it. This guy's just another rat, just like all the rest.
When the UN needs reform, absolutely. But also we're in a position in the world where
This guy, he's got nothing. He's just sitting there looking into space, just gets completely humiliated.
hard as it is, diplomacy and discussion is always important to be done in a way that actually is not hurting anyone. So
Somebody just told this guy who's filming to stop recording. They know this liberal's getting humiliated at this town hall.
we do not support.
He is alone now. It's my right.
And Minister Anand has been
You hear that? Like, oh, stop recording. No, it's my right.
very clear.
Sorry?
It's my right. It's a public
What?
place. It's a public, yes.
But Mr. Oliphant said, please don't film faces. And you turned around and filmed his face.
His phone is in my hand.
As I said earlier, people have asked that we not film this, so I'd ask you to.
Why? Because you're getting humiliated? Come on.
You can film me, but I'd ask you not to film. If
Okay.
you want to have a
It's
discussion with me in my office,
a
you can
public
film
town
me.
hall. It's a public town hall.
No, this is actually, you have to register to be here. It's a
Okay,
little
we
different than
register that, and feeling of the people doesn't define my right. And I am trying just to take a video of you and my friend that asked the question. That's it.
Well, I'm very happy to repeat.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Anand has been very clear that we do not support a military.
This is wild. This guy, they're trying to get them to stop filming. Well, that tells you everything. If they don't want this filmed, you know full well they don't want these statements really out there.
strike. This has been very clear. So that's it. And I would ask actually you respect me. I would actually ask you respect a member of parliament in your tone, or else you won't be in the room for very long.
I
That's
respect
why-
you.
This guy just just threatened to kick him out. He's the member of parliament. Respect me or else. This is wild. His comment here is hilarious. The decision flow chart. Should we help? Yes. If the US is helping, then no. Oppose. No issue statement. Does Russia approve? No. Wait. Yes. Double check with China. No. Wait. Yes. Further study. Canadian leadership equals decisively undecided. This is the ugly face of the liberal media suppression. What horrid times Dan having to attend liberal town halls and trying to drive sense into liberal boneheads. So our national security strategy is determined by the UN now, I guess. Yeah, that's basically what he said there. It'll up to the UN. We're not going to decide anything. We don't know where we want to send our paper airplanes to. Wow, this man.
Yeah, I guess you really needed to see that just to really understand how much the liberals love to work in darkness. Can you imagine that? A public official paid by your tax dollars in a public setting at a public venue telling you, oh, I'm in public, don't film me. Pardon? Excuse me? No. That's not how that works in Canada, buddy. If you are a public figure and you are in the public and I have a camera, I'm going to take pictures of you. I'm going to feel free to videotape you. I'm going to feel free to ask your questions and say anything in any kind of way or fashion that I like, respectfully or not. That's called freedom of expression. It's called civil rights. But liberals don't like that. They really don't like being exposed for the criminals that they are. All right. So, of course, getting onto the theme of our thumbnail for today, which is Canada is an embarrassment. We really are. We keep making international news for the stupidest, wackiest things. We are a batshit bananas crazy country. Here's Clyde do something saying, this Alex Filet Mignon fella would be forced to get a job and move on if he lived anywhere else in the world. He doesn't in Canada. Canada is completely held hostage by sniveling little cry bullies. What I like to call the tyranny of the minority, really. We don't need to listen to Neufeld here. He's basically just explaining why he was so hard done by, because somebody didn't have an option that identified something that we're not allowed to talk to, apparently, because if you didn't know this or not, but in Canada, it's the law that you cannot make fun of trans people. You can't call them mentally deficient. You can't call them as having a mental issue. You can't say anything about them at all. So don't do that, because they'll come after you and sue you. And next thing you know, you'll be in front of a human rights tribunal, and they'll just decide arbitrarily that you owe them $750,000. But in this case here, of course, it was just a $500 fine. But it's the principle. It's the principle, you see, the principle surrounding stupidity. And when we say Canada is embarrassed, now, of course, this man here is not the voice of all Americans, but there's plenty of people around the planet that are starting to realize that Canada has gone off the far left cliff of stupidity.
People that are mentally challenged. This guy in Canada was able to sue because the barber on their website didn't have some fake made-up gender that he could click. So this is really happening in Canada. This barbershop got in a lot of trouble, and I just can't believe it, because on top of all this makes me so mad. The guy doesn't have any hair. He's got no hair. Why is he on a barber's website anyway? Just play the clip.
My name is Alex Frederick Mignot. My pronouns are they, them.
Alex Frederick Mignot says they are satisfied with a ruling by Quebec's Human Rights Tribunal. Mignot complained that a salon's online booking system was discriminatory to non-binary customers. It was ordered to pay $500.
To see the tribunal side with me on that and say that, you know what, non-binary people shouldn't be forced to pick men or women. And it's not fair for them. I was so relieved and happy to hear that.
It all started 2 years ago when Mignot wanted to book a haircut at Station 10 Salon in Longueuil. Customers are asked to choose whether it's for men, women, children, or someone with a beard or braids, something Mignot refused to do.
It's a repetition of a trauma that I keep living over and over again. And it cuts me off from society.
They filed a complaint with Quebec's Human Rights Commission. The salon offered Mignot 3 free haircuts and changed its website to include a non-gendered option. Its co-owner says he's surprised the issue wound up in court.
Well, it's $500. It's not a big amount, but it is a precedent, and many even are.
I mean, guys, Canada is cooked. Just think about it. The tribunal, their court system, actually fined the barbershop $500. And then on top of that, the barbershop offered the guy 3 free haircuts. But what the thing that's missing in all of this is the guy has no hair. Why?
So this is not the first barbershop insanity story that's happened in Canada surrounding human rights tribunals. I believe there was a similar situation in Toronto where a lesbian had gone into a men's haircut place and demanded to have her haircut, and the barber refused, said, no, this is a men's barbershop. And of course, they were upset, and they took him to the Human Rights Tribunal. Well, is there something missing here that he doesn't understand, is that the Human Rights Tribunals are not real courts. However, the courts have to acknowledge their decisions. When I say they're not real courts, the people that occupy these positions in the tribunals are appointed. They're political appointees. They don't have any legal training. They're not lawyers. They're not judges. They're just politically appointed people who have an ideological narrative to follow. So if you think you're going to the Human Rights Tribunal to have your rights that have been violated by a cultural Marxist, you're not going to get justice, because they're going to say, oh no, your rights being violated are the way we want society to go, right? Which is why they made this decision here, which is why they made that $750,000 decision out in BC. Yeah, that's the way she rolls, folks. Now, they're paying extortionists protection money with taxpayer funds to stop extortion, says Sean Rickard. You literally couldn't make this crazy shit up. So, as the Rational Post said, if you just deport the Punjabis, wouldn't that just fix the problem? Now here we have Wiretap Media reporting that the Manitoba government is giving the Punjabi Chamber of Commerce $100,000 in tax dollars to help fight extortion happening in the Punjabi community, perpetrated by Punjabi people. Pardon? Sounds like extortion to me from the taxpayer. This is insane. I mean, 100,000? That's like you could hire an extra person for a year at the police department. I'm sure for 100 grand, maybe even 2 people. Who knows? 2 people part-time, easy, right? To help them do some paperwork. I'm sure there's probably some people out there with training in police services that would gladly take a job back at the office doing paperwork, helping the cops while the cops are out on the beat dealing with the actual extortionists rather than paying the extortionists money. Canada's cooked. Indeed, we are cooked. Speaking of cooked, here's Tokyo Rosie. These 2 headlines actually appeared on the same day. There is perhaps no country on earth more disconnected from reality than Canada at the moment. Of course, look, we talked about this yesterday on my choppy stream. Out of nowhere, Canada's become poorer than Alabama. Oh, is this possible? How did this happen? It's a mystery to me. But at the same time, we're like, new poll finds Prime Minister Mark Carney has broad coalition of support among Canadians for his economic plan. Yeah, the economic plan that he has been advisor to since Trudeau brought him in half a decade ago, that perpetuated the full decade of liberal buffoonery that has resulted in massive amounts of wealth leaving the country, and a whole bunch of other things that we're going to get into in a rant very shortly here, right after we remind you of this. So there's a court case coming up. Here's Dale Arnold is challenging the system because there were 400,000 Canadians who got fired or lost their jobs and then couldn't collect EI because they refused to get the COVID stupidity injection. Imagine paying unemployment insurance your entire working life, every single paycheck, trusting that if you were ever laid off through no fault of your own, that safety net would be there. Unless, of course, if you work in the military, that's the regular force, Canadian Armed Forces. You pay your entire career into EI. You pay your entire career into CPP, neither of which you will ever collect after you retire. Then one day you're told your job depends on taking an experimental injection you're not comfortable with. You decline, you're terminated. And when you apply for EI benefits you faithfully paid into for years, you're denied. Of course, not mentioned here is that some people that were allowed to take EI, they got bullied into taking CERB. And now, of course, those people have to pay that CERB back. So that's CERB. Not because you didn't work, not because you didn't contribute, but because you exercised your right to bodily autonomy. This is exactly what happened to Dave Arnold, and now, in true David versus Goliath battle, he is representing himself before the Federal Court of Appeal on February 25th, 2026 at 9:30 a.m. At stake is more than just one man's claim. This question raises a fundamental question. If Canadians are required to pay into EI, can the government deny benefits when someone exercises bodily autonomy? Dale is asking for your support. And then there's some information here. So yeah, hope we get a follow-up on that. And here's John Robson, something I omitted from my National Post column on Canada being governed as if nothing matters. Justin Trudeau basically invoked martial law over protest. The courts ruled that it was illegal and there were no consequences. And no reason it can't happen again. Oh, schma. Right? And that's why I keep saying every time I repost my video that I've done on this illegal invocation of the Emergencies Act, that they have not made amends. They don't intend to make amends for this. And that tells me they plan to do it again because they don't care. They're not being held accountable for anything. Now, here's the article by John Robson, published on his C2C Journal website. And so let's just watch this video summary here.
If the state can suspend constitutional safeguards in response to a nonviolent protest, can the democratic bargain designed to protect liberty still be considered secure? This question came to a head in January 2026, when the Federal Court of Appeal of Canada upheld the 2024 ruling that the federal government's unprecedented invocation of the Emergencies Act in February 2022 during the Freedom Convoy protests was illegal and unconstitutional. The court found that the Justin Trudeau cabinet failed to meet the strict legal thresholds required for a public order emergency. Specifically, it noted that there was no credible evidence of a threat to national security involving serious physical violence. The government's attempt to redefine serious violence to include economic harm was flatly rejected as an unreasonable expansion that would stifle democratic expression. The ruling also condemned the sweeping prohibitions on assembly and the warrantless freezing of bank accounts as unjustified violations of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. C2C Journal presents a first-hand account from a Canadian Constitution Foundation litigant examining a decision that stands as a major triumph for the rule of law and a defining civil liberties victory of a generation.
Sorry about that. That was probably a little too reverberary. I just noticed I had the boom mic on. Now, what's not mentioned in this little piece is that Public Health Canada can't tell us who certified the vaccine. Freedom of access to information by Rebel News resulted in nobody knows. Nobody can say who authorized the injection. Nobody can say. In fact, there was a post by online someone today that they were talking about experts and how, they're the ones that decide if, medical procedures are safe, and not conspiracy theorists and all that. To which I stated very obviously, well, then how come these experts can't tell us who certified the vaccine. Nobody can. Nobody knows. Nobody, and they did this on purpose, right? So that they can't find out who actually authorized it. They can't point a finger to a specific person. Unfortunately for them, well, there's somebody at the top. Somebody at the top made a decision, and there's always somebody at the top when that decision was made. And of course, they'll be saying, well, no, we had these committees, we had these boards, we had blah, 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 blah. So sorry, buddy. That's why you get the big bucks. That's why you're at the top making that decision. But nobody's ever going to hold them to account. Nobody at all. Now, let's not forget that PI was known for potatoes, but not anymore. Now it's known for being completely captured by the Chinese communists.
To us. And what we found was money laundering, corruption, and elite capture at the highest levels. During our investigation, we had some brave citizens, islanders from Prince Edward Island that came forward and provided a depth of information that would provide for a law enforcement agency sufficient grounds to launch a criminal investigation. The Master Jin Yan, who came into the province, it is our belief from our investigation that he's tied directly back to the PLC, or the Communist Party in China. We were able to establish that the monastery has set up a network of corporations. And if you look at it from a point of view of money laundering, is what you would anticipate finding in an organized crime network. This monastery, if you look at it from a...
So this is not a new story. This is an old story. And of course, I just want to bring that up because the government knows who are the big players. They're the ones who are not doing anything about all the cartels operating in Canada. They're the ones not doing anything about the banks, the Canadian banks, that have been found guilty about money laundering. What are they going to do instead? This one. What are they going to do instead? Oh, I thought I had that picked out there. Well, they are going to be invoking a new level of FinTrack legislation. I thought for sure I had that up. They're going to invoke a new level of FinTrack tracking so that they can further control every single Canadian citizen. They're going to say, oh, it's for safety, it's to deal with extortion, right? We need to know everything that everyone is doing so that we can avoid people asking questions about how we got to this part in the first place. That's right. They spent the last 10 years destroying Canada so that they could bring in their own authoritarian bills to deal with the problems that they created, as opposed to just turning back all the horrible legislation that they did that brought us to this point. But liberals will come back and say, oh, there's no going back. You can't go back to the old world. That was the old time. It's time to get on board with the new world. Yeah, not the new world. Well, this is the new world that they want. We'll finish off with this Gen Xer rant, which I thought would be a good way to close off today's show. Unbelievable. Just 11 years ago, back in 2015, when Trudeau seized power, Canada was a beacon of common sense and freedom. Now we're drowning in absurd policies that punish everyday folks while coddling criminals and wasting our tax fight the government for their civil rights, including all those political prisoners whose lives were destroyed by the coup stupidity, when the government gladly brought in replacements who didn't require the injection as part of their population replacement schemes. Needing a damn government rebate just to afford groceries. The new Canada Groceries and Essentials Benefit handout up to $1,890 for a family of 4 this year because inflation skyrocketed. Yet it's just a band-aid on a gaping wound of affordability crisis. How dare they pat themselves on the back for this? How dare they borrow money just to give food stamps, I would say. Government blowing $1.7 million on social media influencers, mostly for liberal-friendly campaigns. It's insane, eh? That your own tax dollars are being used to brainwash and gaslight Canadians every single day. It's not just QCJO media that they're funding. They're outright funding their own bots online to push propaganda. Individuals acting for the corporate body of the corporate elites known as the Liberal Party cartel, while cracking down on conservative voices. Since 2021, departments like Health Canada splashed over $1.3 million on this, claiming it is to fight disinformation. Hypocritical much? Are money funding propaganda? Yes. How often have you been told by the government that that's misinformation, disinformation, malinformation, which malinformation, whether you know it or not, is information that's true, but just embarrasses the government, that you should not be able to say or put out, just like the way Rob Oliphant, the Liberal MP, doesn't like malinformation getting out there because it might make him look bad. Cops telling us to leave car keys at the front door to avoid home invasions. Toronto police actually advised this amid skyrocketing auto thefts. Basically, just let thieves take your car. What a joke. Indeed, no wonder that police department has been inundated with more corruption accusations. Cops were moved off the beat for being corrupt in the Toronto area. The feds now needing to build us affordable homes. Enter Build Canada Homes, a new agency with $13 billion to crank out housing because the market is in shambles. Yet they're the ones who caused the crisis. Too little, too late. Imagine $13 billion that didn't need to be used as stimulus to build homes when people used to be able to buy their own homes. Yes, they used to be able to buy a property, have a home built on it, and deal with all that stuff, which gave jobs to the people who actually build homes. But no, that's all gone and completely almost destroyed at this point now. The only projects that are finishing up housing-wise are the ones that started years ago, and they're just wrapping up now. And a lot of those workers, they're leaving, or they're thinking, am I going to go work for this Soviet-style block housing assembly line house building place that's going to pay me a fraction that I would get paid on a job site, actually building a home, employing my trade? No, of course, that's what the Liberals wanted too, right? They wanted to replace everything. They want to be able to, only they can provide food for you. Only they can provide housing for you. Only they can tell you what's allowed to be said in matters of free speech. Only they can decide what goes into your body, sounding more and more like a communist country. Lax bail laws, letting violent thugs roam free in days. Violent crimes up 50% since 2015, with repeat offenders released thanks to bills like C-75, prompting new reforms because even cops are begging for change. This is dangerous, and I'm sick of it. What I'm sick of is the constant gaslighting and lying by Liberals in committee and in Parliament, constantly saying from a few cops that they talk to that they want them to push forward these bills that the Liberals have put in to try to unfuck what they've done to Canada. But of course, hidden within those bills are all those small little authoritarian, totalitarian aspects that give them superpowers, like in Bill C-2, that would allow a minister to exempt themselves and all their friends from all legislation in Canada, except, of course, criminal law, for up to 6 years without accountability, without answering, without oversight. Just powers of a king, like they say. And is the press reporting on this? Hardly at all. I think they might have touched a bit on it once with a conservative member, but all their panel discussions that they continually have, always bashing Poilievre or conservatives and never really looking into what the Liberals are doing, they will never broach that subject whatsoever. Letting criminals claim asylum to dodge deportation. 15 extortion suspects are doing just that, stalling removal while abusing our system. Outrageous exploitation. It's appalling. Even to mayors. Close the loopholes now. No, the loopholes will not be closed. They will continue to stay open for as long as possible because replacement of Canada's population with mass migration has always been the plans of the Liberals in order to give them forever power as the natural ruling power, natural ruling party of Canada, because what are they going to do with those 5 million people whose visas expire by the end of the year? They're not going to kick them out of Canada. They're going to give them citizenship. Mark my words. 5 million. 5 million. There's already 1 million. The visas are expired. The other 4 million are going to expire by the end of this year. They have no plan to remove them whatsoever. Letting criminals claim asylum. And the ones that aren't criminals, they're just not going to deport them. They're just going to give them citizenship. Prime Minister calling China our biggest security threat, then ignoring their election meddling. Trudeau admitting Beijing tried to interfere in 2019-2021 elections, but insisted it didn't sway results. While Intel screams pervasive threats. Blind eye? More like willful ignorance. No wonder we gave them PEI. Government unlawfully slamming the Emergencies Act on peaceful protesters. Courts ruled Trudeau's 2022 invocation unreasonable and charter violation, yet they did it anyway to crush dissent. Unforgivable overreach. In fact, unforgivable. And where's the press? Where's the mainstream media? They've been practically quiet since this announcement by the courts, not holding the Liberals to task. If this was a conservative government that had done this, press would be screaming bloody murder every single day. But no, it's their Liberal masters. So they're going to be quiet on that. They're not going to talk about that at all. Punishing law-abiding gun owners for criminal crimes. For criminals' crimes. The gun buyback program forcing legal gun owners to surrender over 1 million firearms worth $4 billion, while real crooks laugh. This isn't safety. It's harassment. It's fascism. It's national socialism. Canada, wake up. This insanity has to stop. Are you as pissed off as I am? Writes Jen J. Xer. Well, that concludes our second breakfast for today. Let's get into the studio mode here. And join us back again tomorrow morning at second breakfast at 9 for hopefully a shorter show. I try to keep these at half hour, but I always run over. And then, of course, afterwards, we will be back in the early afternoon for the no answer period, where we will cover the lower house, where we will continue to cover the lower house until the government decides to stop showing up. And with that, I can just get my intro done here. Very good. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Thanks for coming. Oh, like, share, subscribe.